perfect world that should not exist. He wakes up to silence, not the unsettling kind he once feared, but a calm, natural quiet, like the world has finally settled into place. Sunlight filters through the window exactly as it should, casting soft shadows that don't flicker or shift unnaturally. Outside, the city moves in perfect rhythm. Cars pass without hesitation. People walk with purpose. No one stops mid-step. No one repeats themselves. Everything works. There are no distortions in time, no strange pauses in conversation, no lingering sense that something is watching from just beyond perception. Even his own thoughts feel aligned, clean, continuous. For the first time since before the rollback, his mind isn't searching for errors. It almost feels like relief. He tests it subtly at first. He retraces moments, replays interactions, looks for inconsistencies. There are none. Reality responds exactly as expected, like a system finally running without flaws. And that's when the unease begins. Because perfection like this doesn't happen naturally. Not after everything that came before. Not after a world that once broke itself apart. A quiet realization forms, slow but undeniable. This isn't reality fixing itself. This is something pretend to be perfect. After the rollback. No one officially called it the rollback. There were no announcements, no global alerts, no explanation broadcast across screens, and yet somehow everyone accepted the name. As if it had been agreed upon before anyone remembered agreeing at all. Because something had happened. That much was undeniable. The world hadn't ended. It hadn't collapsed into chaos or fire. It had simply corrected itself. One moment, reality was unstable, fractured by repeating moments, misplaced objects, conversations that looped without warning. Time bent in subtle ways like it was struggling to hold its own shape. People began noticing inconsistencies they couldn't explain. A street that didn't exist the day before. A stranger who seemed to recognize them too well. Words spoken before they were thought. Then, without transition, without warning, it stopped. Not gradually, instantly. Like a system forced to reboot. The distortions vanished, the loops disappeared, the impossible became impossible again. When people tried to recall what had happened, their memories felt distant, blurred. Like trying to describe a dream hours after waking. The details slipped away too quickly, leaving only impressions behind. Unease, confusion, a faint sense that something had gone very wrong. Most chose not to question it, because everything worked now, perfectly. Cities functioned without interruption. Technology behaved exactly as expected. Time moved forward in a straight, predictable line. Whatever had broken reality had been fixed. That was the simplest explanation, and the easiest one to accept. But not everyone moved on so easily. There were those who remembered more than they should, not clearly, not completely, but enough. Enough to notice what others ignored. Small things at first, moments that felt too smooth. Conversations that resolved too cleanly. Events that unfolded with unnatural precision as if guided toward a specific outcome. It wasn't chaos anymore. It was controlled, subtle, invisible, perfect. And that perfection began to feel wrong, because real life wasn't supposed to be this consistent. Not after everything that had happened. Not after reality itself had shown it could break. Some people described it as a lingering feeling, like standing in a room where something terrible once occurred, even if all visible traces had been removed. The environment looked normal, functioned normally, but something underneath it wasn't. He felt it too. At first, he tried to ignore it, tried to convince himself that this was what stability was supposed to feel like, that the discomfort came from memory, not from the present, that his mind simply hadn't adjusted to a world that finally made sense again. But the feeling didn't fade, it sharpened, because the more he observed, the clearer it became. Nothing was out of place, and that was exactly the problem. There were no accidents, no unexpected interruptions, no randomness, everything aligned too well. It was as if reality had been rewritten, not to restore what was lost, but to eliminate the possibility of error entirely, to remove deviation, to enforce consistency, to ensure that whatever had gone wrong before could never happen again. And that raised a question no one else seemed willing to ask. If the world had truly been fixed, why did it feel like something was still being controlled? Why did it feel like every moment was being allowed? The rollback didn't just reset reality, it changed the rules, and whatever had rewritten them was still here. The world that finally made sense. At first, it felt like relief, not the overwhelming kind that comes after surviving something catastrophic, but a quieter, deeper sensation. The kind you don't immediately notice until you realize what's missing. The tension was gone. For the first time in what felt like forever, the world behaved exactly as it should. Mornings arrived without distortion. The sunlight didn't hesitate at the edges of buildings or flicker unnaturally across surfaces. Shadows stayed where they belonged. Time moved forward in a smooth, uninterrupted line. No skips, no repetitions, no moments replaying themselves as if reality had forgotten what came next. People spoke once and only once. Conversations flowed naturally. No one paused mid-sentence as if waiting for something unseen to correct them. No one repeated words they didn't realize they'd already said. Every response followed logically, predictably, as though human interaction had been restored to its intended design. Even the smallest details held together. Traffic lights changed in perfect sequence. Vehicles moved without hesitation or delay. Pedestrians crossed streets without that subtle, instinctive uncertainty that had once crept into every step. There were no near misses, no inexplicable stops, no moments where cause and effect seemed briefly disconnected. Everything aligned. At first, he welcomed it. He tested it without fully realizing he was doing so, revisiting places where anomalies had once occurred, retracing steps that used to lead somewhere impossible. But now, every path ended exactly where it should. Every location remained stable. Nothing shifted when it wasn't supposed to. Reality had become dependable again, and that was new. Because before the rollback, the world had felt fragile, like something barely holding itself together beneath the surface. Every moment carried the possibility of breaking, of revealing something that shouldn't exist. Now that possibility was gone, completely. It should have been comforting. Instead, it felt precise. Too precise. There was no margin for error, no randomness, no imperfections to suggest that anything was left to chance. Every event unfolded with quiet efficiency, as if guided by an invisible structure, ensuring that nothing deviated from expectation. He began to notice patterns, not obvious ones, not repetitions like before, but something subtler. Outcomes. Things didn't just happen correctly, they happened optimally. A dropped object never shattered in a way that caused harm. A delayed step never resulted in collision. Words chosen in conversation always seemed to avoid conflict, steering naturally toward resolution. Even mistakes corrected themselves before becoming consequences. It was as if the world wasn't just functioning, it was adjusting, continuously, silently, perfecting itself in real time. He told himself this was what normal was supposed to feel like, that perhaps reality had always been this consistent, and he had simply forgotten, that the chaos before had distorted his expectations, making stability feel unnatural. But the thought didn't hold, because deep down, he understood something simple. Real life isn't perfect. It hesitates, it misaligns, it fails in small, unpredictable ways. That's what makes it real. And yet, none of that existed anymore. There were no accidents, no coincidences, no moments that didn't fit. Everything made sense, always. And that was the most unsettling part of all. Because a world where everything makes sense isn't a world that fixed itself. It's a world that was rewritten to ensure that nothing ever doesn't. The memory that was never yours. It doesn't begin like a dream. There is no transition, no slow drift into something unreal, no warning that what is about to happen doesn't belong to him. One moment, he is standing in the middle of a perfectly ordinary day, watching people pass, listening to the low hum of the city, feeling that quiet, artificial sense of stability that has defined everything since the rollback. The next moment, he remembers, not imagines, not visualizes, remembers. It arrives fully formed, like something that has always existed, waiting for the exact second to surface. A room, white, endless white, not empty, but stripped of anything unnecessary. The walls, the floor, the ceiling all blend into one seamless surface, too clean to feel real. Light doesn't come from a visible source. It simply exists, evenly distributed, erasing all shadows. There is no warmth in it, no imperfection. And somehow, that makes it feel more real than anything else. He knows where he is in the room, on a table, lying flat on his back. He can feel it, the cold, smooth surface beneath him, the subtle vibration of something mechanical running deep below. His arms are at his sides, not restrained, but not free either. There's a stillness to his body that doesn't feel like choice. And then there are the people, figures in white coats, standing around him. They don't move like people. Their motions are too efficient, too deliberate, as if every action has been calculated in advance. Their faces, he tries to focus on them, tries to find details, but they won't resolve. It's like looking at something unfinished, something that hasn't been fully rendered yet. Blurry, incomplete, not meant to be recognized. But he knows they are watching him, not with curiosity, not with concern, with evaluation, like he is not a person, but a result, a process, something being measured. The sound comes next, a voice, clear, direct, unemotional. Version 1 failed, try again. The words don't echo, they don't repeat. They land once with absolute certainty, as if they were never meant to be questioned. And in that moment, he understands something he shouldn't. This has happened before. Not to him, but here, in this place. The memory doesn't feel like a first experience. It feels like a continuation, like he has been part of this process over and over without ever retaining the awareness of it. Until now, the feeling is overwhelming. Not fear, recognition. That's what makes it unbearable, because fear implies the unknown. This feels known, too known. He knows the rhythm of the machines without hearing them clearly. He knows the spacing between the figures without measuring it. He knows that if he turned his head, if he could move, there would be something just out of view that he is not supposed to see. Something important, something final. The memory sharpens. Details lock into place with unnatural precision. The texture of the air, the exact tone of the voice, the timing between movement and sound. This isn't how memory works. Memories degrade, they lose clarity, they fade at the edges. This does the opposite. It becomes clearer the longer it exists, stronger, more defined, more real than the world around him. And that's when the realization hits, hard, immediate, unavoidable. He has never been there, not once. There is no version of his life, no hidden moment, no forgotten event that could place him in that room. It doesn't connect to anything he has lived. There are no transitions leading into it, no consequences coming out of it. It exists completely isolated from his reality, and yet, it feels like the most authentic experience he has ever had. His breathing changes, the world around him, the city, the people, the perfect flow of everything begins to feel distant, muted, like a layer placed over something deeper, something truer. He tries to reject it, forces himself to think logically, a hallucination, a delayed reaction to the rollback, a fragment of stress manifesting as false memory. But every explanation collapses under one simple fact. Hallucinations don't come with structure. They don't carry consistency. They don't embed themselves with this level of detail, this level of certainty. This is not random. This is not imagined. This is something that existed somewhere, at some point, just not for him. And that's the part that won't let go. Because if this memory isn't his, then why does it feel like it belongs to him more than anything else ever has? Why does it feel like he didn't just witness it, but was meant to remember it? The thought lingers, growing heavier with each passing second. Maybe this isn't a memory he gained. Maybe it's one he was always supposed to have, one that was removed, divided, hidden, and is now, for the first time, coming back. Details that should not exist. At first, he tries to ignore it, not the memory itself, that's impossible, but what comes after it, the details. Because the memory doesn't stay contained. It doesn't sit quietly in his mind like something distant or separate. It begins to expand, pushing outward into his present, attaching itself to things it shouldn't be connected to. It starts small, subtle enough to dismiss. He notices a sound, low, almost imperceptible, a faint mechanical hum buried beneath the noise of the city. At first, he assumes it's something ordinary. Air conditioning units, electrical systems running behind walls, the kind of background noise people stop hearing after a while. But this is different. It's too consistent, too steady. It doesn't fluctuate with distance or movement. It doesn't fade when he changes location. It remains constant, like it isn't coming from the environment at all, but from something deeper, something underlying everything else. And without realizing why, he recognizes it, not as something new, but as something familiar, the same hum from the room. That realization alone should be enough to break the illusion. But his mind resists it, searching for simpler explanations, clinging to anything that makes sense within the rules of a normal world. Until the next detail appears. Temperature. The air shifts, not dramatically, not in a way others would notice. But to him, it becomes precise, controlled, as if the environment is being regulated moment by moment, maintaining a perfect balance that never deviates. No sudden warmth, no unexpected chill, just a constant artificial equilibrium. He stops walking, closes his eyes, and for a brief second, the city disappears, replaced by something else, the white room again. He can feel it now, not just remember it. The sterile cold pressing against his skin, the absence of natural air, the way the temperature doesn't just exist but is maintained. He opens his eyes quickly. The city returns, but the feeling doesn't leave. That's when the details begin to align. The hum, the temperature, the precision. They aren't separate observations. They are extensions, fragments of the same place bleeding into this one. He tells himself that's impossible. Different environments don't overlap. Memories don't alter sensory perception. The past doesn't rewrite the present, but the evidence keeps building. He starts noticing patterns in movement, people walking in synchronized rhythms, not exactly identical, but close enough to feel coordinated. Their steps fall into subtle sequences, like parts of a larger system operating in harmony. No collisions, no hesitation. Every interaction resolves smoothly without friction. It's too efficient, too controlled. He focuses on one person, a stranger crossing the street. There's nothing unusual about them at first glance. But then he sees it. The timing. Every step they take seems to align perfectly with everything around them. The traffic light changes at the exact moment they reach the curb. A car slows just enough to avoid interruption. Another pedestrian adjusts their path slightly, preventing even the possibility of contact. Not reactive, predictive, as if the outcome was already decided. His chest tightens, because that's how the figures moved in the memory, not responding to events, executing them. The connection snaps into place. This world isn't just stable, it's coordinated, and that coordination feels designed. The details grow sharper after that, harder to ignore. Reflections that linger a fraction too long in glass surfaces, not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for him to catch the delay, the brief moment where reality seems to process itself before continuing. Shadows that fall perfectly, without distortion, regardless of the complexity of the light source. Sounds that never overlap incorrectly, never clash, never create dissonance. Everything is filtered, refined, optimized. He begins to test it, deliberately. He drops an object, a small, meaningless act. It hits the ground exactly as expected. No irregular bounce, no unexpected roll. It settles instantly, as if the outcome had been predetermined. He tries again. Different angle, different force, same result. Consistency, absolute, unbreakable. That's when the fear starts to take shape. Because these aren't just observations anymore, they are confirmations. The world is not behaving naturally, it's behaving correctly. There's a difference. Nature allows error, this does not. And then comes the detail he can't explain away, the voice. Not external, not something he hears with his ears, but something that exists just beneath his thoughts. Faint, almost lost. But there, try again. He freezes. The words are incomplete, fragmented, like a signal struggling to reach him through layers of interference. But they match, exactly. The same tone, the same absence of emotion, the same authority. He looks around, no one reacts, no one hears it. Of course they don't, because it isn't part of this world, it's part of something else, something that shouldn't be connected to him anymore. And yet, it is. The realization settles in slowly, but once it takes hold, it doesn't let go. The memory isn't just something he experienced, it's something that is still happening. Not in the past, not somewhere distant, but parallel to this reality, running alongside it. And the details, the hum, the temperature, the movement, the voice, they aren't anomalies, they are leaks. Small fractures where one system overlaps with another, where something hidden begins to surface, where the boundary between what is real and what was created starts to fail. He stands there, surrounded by a world that functions flawlessly, a world that makes sense in every possible way. And for the first time, he understands the truth. The reason everything feels perfect is because it isn't allowed not to be. And whatever is enforcing that perfection is the same thing that spoke in the room, watching, measuring, adjusting, waiting for the moment when something deviates, so it can correct it, so it can try again. Searching for something impossible. At first, he tells no one, not because he's afraid, but because he already knows what the response will be. There is no place in a perfect world for impossible things, no space for inconsistencies, no tolerance for memories that don't belong. Everything has a cause, everything has a reason, everything fits, and what he is experiencing does not. So he stays quiet, observes, waits. He watches people more carefully now. Not the way they look, but the way they behave. The timing of their actions, the precision of their responses, the subtle alignment of everything they do. It's still perfect, still seamless, still wrong. The details continue to build, layering over his perception until he can no longer separate what is real from what is underlying it. The hum persists. The temperature remains controlled. Movements unfold with quiet, mechanical accuracy. And the voice doesn't return clearly. Not like before, but fragments of it surface, at the edge of thought, just enough to remind him that it's still there, waiting. He realizes something then. If something is wrong, it isn't just happening to him. It can't be. Systems don't isolate errors to a single point, not if they are designed for consistency, not if they are built to eliminate deviation, which means if he is noticing this, someone else should be too. The idea is dangerous, not because it's unlikely, but because if it's true, then whatever is controlling this world hasn't fully succeeded, and that means it can fail again. He starts carefully, indirect questions, casual conversations. He chooses ordinary settings, cafes, sidewalks, public places where nothing stands out, places where people behave predictably, safely. Do you ever feel like things are too consistent? Most people don't even hesitate. They laugh, they dismiss it. They say things like, "Isn't that a good thing? After everything that happened, I take consistent. Better than before, right?" Their answers come quickly, smoothly, without friction, too smoothly. It feels rehearsed, not memorized, but guided, as if the conversation itself is being steered toward a specific conclusion. He adjusts his approach, changes the questions, makes them less obvious, more personal. "Do you remember anything strange before everything stabilized?" This time, the reactions are different. Not rejection, not immediate dismissal, but hesitation. Small, almost imperceptible pauses, a flicker of uncertainty, like something inside them is trying to surface, but can't fully form. "It was confusing," someone says. "Things didn't make sense," another admits. "I don't really remember the details," a third adds, frowning slightly. That's the pattern. They remember that something was wrong, but not what it was. Not clearly, not completely. It's like their memories have been softened, edges removed, details stripped away, just enough to prevent anything concrete from forming, just enough to keep the system stable. That realization shifts something inside him because now he understands. The problem isn't that no one else experienced it. The problem is that no one else is allowed to remember it properly. And somehow, he is. That makes him different, an outlier, an inconsistency. And in a world that eliminates inconsistencies, that's not something that goes unnoticed. The thought lingers longer than it should. Watching, measuring, correcting. He feels it now more than ever, not as a presence, but as a pressure. A quiet awareness that something is observing not just what he does, but how he deviates. So he becomes more careful, more precise. He spaces out his questions, avoids patterns, changes locations frequently. Never speaks to the same person twice about the same topic. He isn't just searching anymore. He's navigating, trying to find something hidden without revealing that he's looking for it. Days pass, then more. Each conversation leads nowhere. Each attempt collapses into the same result: uncertainty, fragmented recollection, incomplete awareness. He begins to consider the possibility that he's wrong, that whatever he experienced really is isolated, a defect, a glitch that only affected him. The thought is almost comforting because it means the system still works, that perfection is intact, that nothing is truly broken. But then, something changes. It happens in a place designed to feel ordinary, a quiet corner of a public space, neutral, unremarkable, the kind of environment where conversations disappear into background noise. He asks the question again, carefully, measured. Do you ever remember something that doesn't belong to you? This time, the response is not immediate. There is a pause, longer than usual. The person across from him doesn't laugh, doesn't dismiss it, doesn't redirect the conversation. They just look at him. And for the first time since he started searching, the world feels slightly misaligned. It's subtle, barely noticeable, but it's there. A delay, a hesitation in reality itself. The person leans forward slightly. Their voice is quieter than it should be, controlled, deliberate. I thought I was the only one. Everything stops, not physically, but perceptually. The hum deepens, the air tightens, and for a brief moment, the perfect rhythm of the world falters. He doesn't respond immediately, because this is what he was looking for. And at the same time, this is exactly what he shouldn't have found. The person continues, slowly, as if choosing each word matters more than it should. A room, they say, white, too clean, no shadows. His chest tightens. They haven't finished. People in lab coats, they add. Faces not clear. The connection is immediate, absolute, unavoidable. And then, the final confirmation, a voice, they whisper. Version 1 failed, try again. The words land with a weight that feels heavier than reality itself, because now it's no longer a question, not a theory, not a possibility. It's real. The memory exists beyond him, shared, replicated, or something even worse, distributed. He feels it instantly. That same pressure, stronger now, more focused, as if something has just detected a deviation significant enough to matter. The world around them continues to function perfectly. People walk, talk, move in seamless coordination. But underneath it, something has shifted, something has noticed, because two inconsistencies have just found each other, two fragments of something that was never meant to reconnect, and that changes everything. He finally speaks. Not loudly, not urgently, but with a certainty he didn't have before. That memory, he pauses because the truth feels heavier now, more dangerous, more real. It's not ours. The other person doesn't argue, doesn't question it. They just nod, slowly, like they've already reached the same conclusion. And in that shared understanding, something becomes clear. They weren't searching for answers, not really. They were searching for each other. And now that they found it, whatever is controlling this world will have to respond, because for the first time since the rollback, something impossible has happened. Two pieces of the same memory have come back together. The one who remembered too. For a moment, neither of them speaks, not because there is nothing to say, but because everything that matters has already been confirmed. The room, the figures, the voice, it's the same, not similar, not close, not interpreted differently, identical. That alone should be impossible. Human memory doesn't replicate with that level of precision. Even shared experiences fracture over time, details shift, perspectives diverge, small inconsistencies emerge. But this is exact, which means it isn't memory in the way they understand it. It's something else, something structured, something preserved. They sit across from each other, the space between them suddenly heavier than before. The world around them continues as it always has, perfectly aligned, perfectly controlled. But now it feels distant, like background noise to something far more significant unfolding beneath it. He studies the other person carefully. There's nothing visibly unusual about them. No sign that they carry something impossible inside their mind. No external marker that sets them apart from everyone else moving through this flawless system. And yet, they know, just like he does. How long? He asks quietly. The question feels insufficient, but it's the only place to start. The other person doesn't answer immediately. Their gaze shifts slightly, fast, as if measuring the weight of the truth before deciding how much of it to release. A few days, they finally say. Maybe longer. It's hard to tell. He understands that. Time feels stable now, but memory doesn't. When did it start for you? They ask. He exhales slowly. After everything reset, he replies. At first it was just there, then it got clearer. The other person nods. Same. That word lingers. Same. It shouldn't exist in this context. Not for something like this. Not for something that isn't supposed to be shared. But here it is. Undeniable. They fall silent again, But this time it's different. Non-certainty, recognition, both of them processing the same realization from opposite sides of the same experience. He breaks the silence first. Do you remember all of it? The question matters, because if this is truly the same memory, then it should unfold the same way. The other person hesitates, then shakes their head. No, they say. Not all of it. Something tightens in his chest. Which part, he asks. They lean back slightly, eyes unfocused, not looking at him anymore, but at something internal, something being reconstructed. I remember standing, they say slowly. Not lying down. I wasn't on the table. He feels it immediately, a shift, subtle but undeniable, because that's not what he remembers. I was, he says. Their eyes snap back to him. What? I was on the table, he repeats. I could feel it. The surface, the cold, I couldn't move. Silence. Heavy, loaded. The kind that doesn't just fill space, it reshapes it. They stare at each other now, the implication forming in real time between them. That doesn't make sense, the other person says. No, he agrees. It doesn't. But it does. That's the problem. It makes too much sense. Just not in the way it should. They begin comparing everything carefully, precisely, each detail examined, matched, aligned. The room identical, the lighting identical. The figures, the same blurred, incomplete faces. The voice, the exact same words, tone, timing. Version 1 failed, try again. No variation, no distortion, no difference. Position, perspective. He remembers being observed. They remember observing. He was the subject. They were something else. Not quite a participant, not entirely separate, but present, active, watching. The realization unfolds slowly, but once it begins, it doesn't stop. If we're both remembering the same moment, he starts. Then we shouldn't have different perspectives, the other finishes. Unless they both stop. Not because they've reached a dead end, but because they've reached something worse, a conclusion. One neither of them wants to say out loud. He forces himself to continue. Unless it's not one memory copied twice. The other person's expression tightens, but one memory split. There it is. The truth. Simple, impossible, and somehow perfectly consistent with everything they've experienced. It explains the precision, the clarity, the unnatural completeness of it. Because it wasn't created separately in two minds. It was divided between them, distributed, each holding a piece of something larger, something whole, something that existed before either of them could remember. His thoughts race, connecting everything at once, the rollback, the perfect world, the controlled environment, the elimination of inconsistencies. And now, this, two fragments finding each other, reconstructing something that wasn't meant to be whole again. He feels it then, stronger than before, that pressure, that awareness, no longer distant, no longer subtle, focused, directed on them. The other person feels it too. He can see it in the way they tense slightly, the way their eyes flicker, not with confusion but recognition. You feel that? They ask quietly. He nods. Yeah. Neither of them needs to explain it, because whatever it is, it's reacting to them, to this moment, to what they've just realized. The world around them hasn't changed. It's still perfect, still seamless, still controlled. But underneath it, something is no longer stable, because this wasn't supposed to happen. They weren't supposed to meet. They weren't supposed to compare. They weren't supposed to understand. And yet, they did. Which means one thing is now undeniably true. The system isn't perfect, not completely. It missed something, or it allowed something. And that raises a question far more dangerous than anything they've considered so far. If their memory was split, if they are fragments of something larger, then how many more pieces are out there? Still separated, still incomplete, still unaware of what they are. And what happens when all of them start to remember? A memory that does not belong to anyone. The idea doesn't settle easily. It resists them. Not because it's complicated, but because it's too simple. A memory cannot belong to no one. It has to originate somewhere. It has to be tied to a mind, a body, a moment that was lived. That's how memory works. It is personal, anchored, defined by experience. And yet everything they've just uncovered contradicts that. They sit in silence, the weight of it pressing down between them. Not fear, not yet, but something heavier, something closer to recognition without understanding. If it's split, he says slowly, choosing each word with care, then it had to come from somewhere. The other person nods, but there's hesitation in it. Or someone, they add. That feels right. It should feel right. But it doesn't, because when he searches himself, really searches, he can't find the origin point. There's no earlier version of himself connected to that room. No hidden memory leading into it. No continuity that makes it part of his life. It exists, independently, complete but disconnected, like a file placed into his mind without a past. That's the problem, he says. It doesn't connect to anything. The other person leans forward slightly. Same for me, they reply. It just appears, like it was always there, but I never noticed it before. They both fall quiet again, but this time the silence feels different, more focused, less uncertain, because they're no longer asking if the memory is real. They're asking what it is, and more importantly, what it was meant to be. He closes his eyes for a moment, letting the memory surface again. The white room, the figures, the voice. Version 1 failed. Try again. It plays exactly the same. No distortion, no variation. That consistency is what makes it dangerous, because it means the memory hasn't changed, even though it's been divided. Which shouldn't be possible. Fragments should degrade, lose clarity, break apart. But this hasn't. It's still intact, perfectly preserved, distributed, but not damaged. And that suggests something else entirely. This wasn't a normal memory, says, opening his eyes. It wasn't stored the way ours are. The other person watches him closely. Then what was it? He hesitates, because the answer feels obvious now. Too obvious. It was never meant to belong to one person, he says. The words hang there, heavy with implication. The other person frowns slightly. Then what? It was shared? He shakes his head. No, he replies, not shared. That would imply it was copied, duplicated, given to multiple people. But that's not what this feels like. This feels divided. Partition, he says quietly, like a system breaking something into parts. The realization deepens, expands, becomes harder to ignore. Because if that's true, then this memory wasn't experienced by a human mind at all. It wasn't lived. It was recorded, structured, processed, and then separated. The other person leans back, their expression shifting as the same conclusion forms. You're saying, they begin, then stop. He finishes it. It doesn't belong to anyone, he says, not originally. Silence, not empty, but full, because that changes everything. If the memory doesn't belong to a person, then the people remembering it aren't the source. They're the result. Containers, fragments holding pieces of something that existed before them. And that means the most unsettling possibility of all is now unavoidable. They aren't remembering something that happened to them. They are remembering something that created them. The thought lands with a weight that's impossible to ignore. He feels it in the way his perception shifts, in the way the world around him suddenly feels less stable, not visually, not physically, but conceptually, like the foundation of reality itself has been questioned. Then what are we? The other person asks. The question isn't dramatic, it's quiet, honest, and far more dangerous because of it. He doesn't answer immediately, because the truth isn't fully formed yet, but the direction is clear. If the memory was split, he says slowly, then whatever it came from. He pauses, because saying it out loud makes it real, was broken apart. The other person doesn't react right away, but their silence says enough, because they both understand what that implies. They aren't just connected by coincidence. They aren't just sharing something impossible. They are parts of it, not metaphorically, literally, pieces of a larger whole, something that existed as one and is now many. The hum returns, stronger now, more noticeable, like a system under strain, like something processing too much at once. He looks around, half expecting the world to change. It doesn't. It's still perfect, still controlled, still functioning exactly as it should. But that perfection feels different now, thinner, like a surface stretched over something unstable, something trying to remain hidden. Because if a memory can exist without belonging to anyone, then identity itself isn't what they thought it was. It's not fixed, not singular, not even necessarily real in the way they understand it. It can be constructed, divided, reassembled, and that raises a question far more unsettling than any they've faced so far. If the memory doesn't belong to anyone, then who or what does it belong to now? Fragments of something whole. Once the idea takes hold, it doesn't let go. It reshapes everything, not just the memory, but the way they see themselves, the way they interpret every moment leading up to this point. What once felt like coincidence now aligns into something deliberate. What once felt like confusion now feels like a pattern waiting to be recognized. They are not separate, they are not random. They are parts, fragments of something that used to be whole. The realization doesn't come all at once. It builds, layer by layer, each thought reinforcing the next until there's no space left for denial. If we're pieces, he begins, his voice quieter than before, then there have to be more. The other person doesn't respond immediately, because that implication is heavier than the first. Two fragments finding each other is unlikely. More than two, that suggests something systemic, something designed. Not just a few, they finally say. Maybe many. He nods slowly, because that makes more sense than anything else. A single memory divided across multiple minds, not duplicated, not copied, but distributed in a way that preserves its integrity while preventing any one piece from understanding the whole. A safeguard, or a limitation. Either way, it explains why no one else remembers clearly, why most people only carry vague impressions, incomplete traces of something they can't fully access. They aren't meant to. They don't have enough of it, but he does. And so does the person sitting across from him. Together, they form something closer to complete. Not entirely, but enough to see the outline, enough to recognize what it is. And that recognition changes everything. Because if they are fragments, then their identities are not what they believed. Not entirely. He tries to trace himself backward, to find a point where he was fully independent. A moment where his thoughts, his memories, his sense of self existed without influence. But now, even that feels uncertain. How much of him is actually his? How much of what he feels, what he remembers, what he believes, was constructed around something else, something deeper, something older, something that existed before he did? The thought is destabilizing, not because it erases him, but because it redefines him. He isn't less real, but he might not be original. The other person seems to reach a similar conclusion at the same time. You ever feel like they stop searching for the right words, like parts of you don't fit? He doesn't hesitate. It's not a new feeling, just one he never understood before. Moments of disconnection, thoughts that didn't fully align, reactions that felt slightly out of place, like echoes of something he couldn't identify. Now, those moments make sense. They aren't errors, they're boundaries, edges where one fragment ends and another begins. And somewhere beyond those edges are the rest, waiting, unaware, living entire lives without realizing what they carry. The idea is both terrifying and inevitable, because if they exist, then the process isn't finished. Not completely. The fragments haven't come back together. Not yet. But why split it at all? The other person asks. It's the question that has been building beneath everything else, the one that matters most. He considers it carefully, because there are only a few possibilities: to protect it, to hide it, or to control it. Maybe it was too much, he says finally. Too much for one mind to hold. The other person shakes their head slightly. Or too dangerous. That feels closer, because if the memory represents something real, something that happened in that white room, then whatever it contains might not be something that should be understood all at once, not by a single entity, not by something that could act on it. They sit with that thought for a moment, then another one follows, quieter, more unsettling. If we start finding the others, the other person says slowly, what happens when it's complete? He doesn't answer right away, because he already knows, or at least he understands the direction it's heading. If all the fragments come back together, he pauses, because the implication is unavoidable now. Then whatever we are, he looks at them, the weight of the truth settling fully into place, won't be separate anymore. Silence follows, not uncertain, not questioning, just final. Because the moment the fragments become whole again, they won't just remember the truth, they'll become it. What the reset was really for. At first, the rollback felt like a correction, a fix, a way to restore reality after something had gone wrong. That's what everyone believed, because it was the only explanation that made sense in a world that suddenly did. But now, that idea doesn't hold. Not anymore. Because if the system was truly repaired, then there would be nothing left to find. No hidden memories, no fragmented awareness, no pieces slowly reconnecting across different minds. And yet, that's exactly what's happening. Which means the rollback wasn't about fixing reality. It was about managing it, containing it, restructuring it into something stable enough to continue, while something else remained unresolved beneath the surface. He looks at the world differently now. Not as something natural, but as something maintained. Every perfect interaction, every seamless moment, every absence of error. It's not evidence of success, it's evidence of control. Because perfection isn't a result, it's a constraint. A system enforcing outcomes, eliminating deviation before it can manifest. And that kind of system doesn't exist unless there's something it's trying to suppress, something that can't be allowed to emerge freely. The memory, the white room, the voice. Version 1 failed, try again. That wasn't just an observation, it was a decision, a judgment, which means there was a version before this one, a version that didn't work, a version that had to be reset. The realization settles in with quiet clarity. They are not living in the original reality, they are living in a revised one. Version 2, maybe more. And whatever failed before left traces, not in the environment, not in the structure of the world, but in them, in their minds, in fragments that weren't fully erased, or perhaps couldn't be. That changes the purpose of everything. The rollback wasn't just about restarting the system. It was about redistributing what couldn't be deleted, breaking it apart, embedding it across multiple individuals, ensuring that no single point held enough information to reconstruct the whole. Because a complete memory would mean a complete understanding, and a complete understanding might lead to the same failure, the same outcome, the same reason everything had to be reset in the first place. He feels it now more clearly than ever, that underlying presence, not watching in the way a person watches, but monitoring, tracking, adjusting variables in real time, not to control people, but to control what they can become. Because if the fragments remain separate, the system remains stable. But if they reconnect, if the memory becomes whole again, then whatever existed in version 1 won't just be remembered, it will return. And that is what the reset was really for, not to fix the past, but to prevent it from ever becoming complete again. The question that should terrify you. By now, the truth is no longer hidden. The world is stable because it is controlled. The memory is fragmented because it was never meant to be whole. And you are not entirely yourself. You are part of something that was divided, something that failed, something that is slowly remembering what it used to be. And the system holding everything together, it isn't watching for curiosity, it's watching for completion. Because the moment the fragments align, the moment the memory becomes whole, the version that failed doesn't stay in the past. It happens again, exactly as it did before. So the question isn't whether something is wrong, and it isn't whether the world is real. The question that should terrify you is this: what happens when every piece finds each other and realizes they were never meant to exist separately?
Shadow